I've always been driven by the belief that business is the most powerful vehicle of change we have at our disposal. And businesses in just about every sector are attracting customers because they successfully balance purpose and profit. Because they, like me, believe the world needs to transition to a kinder economy. And in a market where customers are making more informed decisions about how and where they spend their money, now more than ever, businesses must reevaluate what their license to operate really is. I'm Nick Hunter, CEO and founder of B Corp creative agency Paper Moose, and for years I've been obsessed with navigating that perfect balance between purpose and profit. We call it the mucky middle. Welcome to my podcast, where I chat with successful business leaders about how they navigate the challenges that come with finding their own balance, and hopefully learn how to be a better and more conscious business owner along the way. Today, I'm speaking with Brooke Roberts, co-founder of Sharesies, a New Zealand fintech working to create financial empowerment for everyone. Brooke and I talk about the B Corp movement and why every business should be a social enterprise, what it's like sharing the CEO role with two other founders, and how we both find the energy to run a business in parallel with our family lives. I hope you enjoy. This is The Mucky Middle. Thanks so much for joining me, Brooke. You are the co-founder and CEO of Sharesies, a B corporation, and an organization that is working to create a world of financial empowerment for everyone. But I guess before we jump into Sharesies and all of that, I guess I wanted to know a little bit about, yourself and what was it that, you wanted to be when you were a kid. Did you imagine that you'd be at this point?
So when I was a kid, it did change over time what I wanted to be. When I was really young, I wanted to be a singer. I loved singing and dancing and being kind of theatrical as a child. And I thought I might get into acting or something. This is when I was really young, primary school, because I had quite a lot of energy and the teachers didn't really know how to harness that, nor did I. And so they'd put me into things like that.
Either going to be an entrepreneur or an actor.
Like they thought, I'll put her into that stuff and she can use up her energy, or athletics and things like that. So that's kind of where I spent my time. And then I heard my voice and I was like, maybe not. When I was at high school, some friends, we recorded each other. Anyway, it didn't sound that flash. So I was like, maybe change it to that. I then thought I would get into fashion design. I really enjoyed the craft of it. I didn't really learn how to sew until I was at high school, and then just really enjoyed it and entered competitions and started to really get into it. But when I was at these competitions, I got to see other designers and I was like, wow, that's so good. Maybe, this needs to come to life. Maybe what I could do is be on the business side of it and help them work with creatives and help them bring their, awesome talents to the world and make a living out of it. So I thought that's maybe where I'd go. And I started high school. At high school, I started businesses. From there, really learned that that's kind of where a lot of my skills are, actually, is in bringing something to life. And
you started businesses when you were in high school, did you say?
Yeah.
Wow. What's like? It sounds like well beyond kind of a lemonade stand. What sort of businesses were you making back then?
So there's this thing that schools run, as some schools run, called Young Enterprise, where they help you, your business studies teacher or something, you can add it on as extra, and you learn how to actually create a company, and you create one and you've got to make profit within the year, or learn, what it's like if you don't. So I did that, but Young Enterprise wasn't really offered at my school, but I went to my business studies teacher and say, hey, I've got this business idea and I'm going to do it. She's like, hey, well, there's this thing called Young Enterprise. And so it helped put a bit of a structure around it. So I ran some businesses. The first, the one I did at the start was actually running fashion shows at our school, and got the local retailers from the area that I lived in, got them all displaying their stock. So they paid to be in the show. We, packed out the school gymnasium. I think had like 1,000 or so people in there, made profit in the, first time we did it. And I was like, oh, this worked quite well. With the profit, didn't have things like investing that accessible back then. So I bought myself a flip phone that had these like blue lights that lit up. Waste of money really, in hindsight. And I definitely was trying to find ways earlier than that to, make ends meet and earn money, and creating a business was part of that.
I love that. And so Sharesies, that's your first like proper, like really big business, or is it sort of, tell me about the genesis of Sharesies.
When I was running these businesses at school, I actually thought I would continue to do that. I was offered a job when I was at school, they'd pay for my university, and I could just run businesses. I thought I'd do that, but I needed to stay in kind of the small town I was in. And just before university applications closed, I was like, nah, I do need to go. So I went down to university and studied, and then I ended up working in banking and technology. This whole time I was like playing with business ideas on the side. And yeah, some of them aligned to my passion, some of them on reflection, like, why would I ever choose to do that? Like, I don't even enjoy that work, like you've really got to enjoy getting in there and doing it at the start. But then Sharesies came about because working in banking and working in technology saw that there was so much more opportunity to give the technology available today. There's no reason that someone with $5 and 5 million can't have the same money opportunities. And one of our co-founders, Sonia, had the initial idea behind Sharesies. She's like, I wish $50 could be meaningful. I wish you could build it over time. Wish we could invest and feel like we could get ahead. And at that time, there's a lot of conversation in the media about millennials spending all their money on smashed avocados, and and it really felt like there wasn't too much hope in terms of being able to have access to the opportunities that people wanted in the future. And we've seen the powers of investing, well, when I studied, not in like directly. And so thought, well, along with the other 6 founders, let's give this a crack. And 7 years ago, we started to work on Sharesies.
Amazing. So it's only been 7 years.
Yeah.
Wow. That's a pretty incredible growth trajectory in 7 years.
Yeah, it's been it's as a founder, you're always like on the hunt, like you always know that there's so much more to do. But
yeah, it's never fast enough, but it's been 13 years for us. So I feel like we should be in 3 different countries by now then.
Yeah, it's always a bit harder than you think.
And what was the seed of Sharesies that kind of like, this is the idea, this is what I want to throw my life behind?
We knew that there was something that needed to change in this space. As I said, there were obviously economically, it felt like there was more inequality and less access to opportunities, really. And with technology, that could be changed. But we didn't just go, sweet, now we'll just go with this thing called Sharesies. What we did was we just spent quite a bit of time talking with people and doing ethnographic interviews. So really deep diving into their life. And it was amazing how open people were with us about money and how they feel about it and how they earn it and how they think about it and where is it going and do they want to be an investor and what does that mean to them and what about superannuation and how does that play in. And we learned heaps. And what we learned really boiled down to 3 key problems we knew we needed to solve, which was 1, people felt priced out of being able to grow wealth, or investing. They felt like you need heaps of money, tens of thousands to get started. They also felt jargoned out, like you needed a degree in finance or be following the markets all the time. And third, ultimately felt branded or left out, that it wasn't for them. But what we also learned is that 99% of people wanted to be an investor, and they're also, even if they had superannuation, they didn't consider themselves an investor. And they wanted to have those skills. And we also learned through that research that investing could be the best place we could start when helping create more money opportunities for people, because it's an area where it's future thinking, it's goal focused, and also is hopeful. So we've noticed as people start to learn a bit more about investing and going, oh, I can do that, and this can create these opportunities in my future, then it starts helping reframe budgeting or where money's going or how money is entering their home. And so that's quite interesting just to see, it's like any goal, you've got to have a goal to help figure out how to get there. And that's what we learned with starting with investing. So yeah, we launched the platform 7 years ago. It had 6 investment options. And now we've got over 8,000 access to the New Zealand Stock Exchange, Australian Stock Exchange, US exchanges, and just, heaps more to do.
And what is it that kind of feeds you? Like what gets you up and keeps the engine going? Because I know, running my own business, it requires a lot of energy and you got to keep stocking that. What is it for you?
As I mentioned in my childhood, I have got a ridiculous amount of energy that I have to calm down sometimes. So that's kind of a bit of me. But what really drives my passion and purpose in this space is so much can be driven from those initial conversations we had. We were just like, wow, there's a world people are experiencing and a world we see where that goes away,
Mm.
and we need to keep creating that. And so that always drives me. And then when you hear people when they've read the Shares Guide to Investing or something, and they feel like, oh, I can really understand this now, or that confidence that comes from that. And so much of our experience with money and perceptions around money comes from our confidence and knowledge too. And we don't get taught that well at school when it comes to money and investing. And it's a big part of our lives. And not everybody comes from families where they come from generations of investors that pass that knowledge down. I definitely wasn't. So it's really cool to be able to open up essentially this black box or this opaque world that's been there, and make sure people have more access, and then build, feel more confident and motivated. The other part that really interests me too is how we can help work closer with those companies that are listed, or companies, and help them share the knowledge and the wealth creation that they're creating. So, companies giving their staff shares, and how we support that too, because if you're working in a place, it's awesome if you're also getting remunerated in the way that you're creating value for that company. So getting shares in that company also is a great way of people being able to kind of share that wealth over time.
You're talking about the employee share scheme
Yeah,
product that you also have? Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Because that hasn't launched in Australia yet, has it?
We offer it to NZX and ASX listed companies, and there are some Australian customers that are on that.
Yeah, we went through, like, we have a employee profit share scheme, which
Oh yeah,
was, because it is it's very complicated to set up a share
yeah.
scheme. I remember hearing you talk at Purpose and going, oh wow, they've simplified that really complicated process and enabled companies to be able to do that for their staff, which is just awesome. What have you seen in terms of the take up with that?
Yeah, well, it's relatively new, but quite a lot of take up. There's interesting in companies. There's typically kind of two types of schemes they have, like a broad base, which is all of their staff, or leadership only. And it's cool to start to see why companies think that way, and how can we get it more broad, and so that everyone kind of has a slice of the pie. So it just seems like there's a lot of opportunity in there to make it easier for companies to be able to do that.
I guess that ties us neatly into, I guess, the B Corp and
Yeah.
being for the benefit of all stakeholders. Can you tell me a little bit about, like, when did you guys become a B Corp, and why did you want to do that, and what's that kind of been like?
When we were in our first few weeks of starting Sharesies, I opened up the B impact assessment and started to do it, and went to we didn't obviously have all the information yet, so no, to go back to it, and entered it as soon as we could. And I realized you needed a year's worth of revenue before you could submit it. So we submitted it as soon as we could. We became certified in April 2018, I believe, or 2019. Yeah, been a B Corp ever since. Last year went through our recertification. And that was really important to us, because we wanted to know we were creating a business that is a force for good, and that we are held to a standard, hold ourselves to a higher standard, and always developing in terms of how we're supporting the community, our workers, our customers, the environment, and how we are having a positive impact. And so it's really helpful that has been ingrained in what we wanted to achieve as founders, and then in our constitution, even since, we are a B Corp.
Awesome. And in terms of, I guess, the employee share scheme and being a benefit to everyone, how do you feel the responsibility of being like a business owner and a leader? Like, what responsibility do you think we have in terms of our employees and I guess the greater world as well? Sometimes our world's spheres of influence are quite small, but they can have lots of big ripple effects.
So true. I think as a any business leader, or anyone in a business, hopefully, depending on how it's structured, has a lot of ability to drive that change. And for Sharesies, we have a tremendous kind of amount of responsibility in that regard, which is crucial, I think, for any business leader to feel in this day and age, to be very aware of the operations that are happening in the company and how it's impacting others. I also love that. I mean, that's what I wanted to get into business for. Really care. I remember learning more and more about social enterprise when I was at university, and I was like, every business should be a social enterprise. Like, what's the point if you're not solving a societal problem, or an environmental problem? So it's great too, because there's an awesome community you're in. And I think a lot of people shy away from it because they're scared that, they think they need to be perfect. But actually, I've learned nobody is perfect, no business is perfect. But if you're incrementally and you're improving and you're focused on being a bit better each day, that ultimately adds up. And as they say, a rising tide floats all boats. And so as we become better B Corps and others join, we're all increasing the standard of those around us, or the standard we're going to be held to. So yeah, I think it's great.
Have you noticed copycats or businesses taking on certain elements out of Sharesies' book?
We do things quite differently, and I'm sure there's things that people can take from that, and that's awesome. And they say, I guess, imitation is the highest form of flattery, but I've never seen anyone do it with the same purpose and care in mind. We really care about our things being for purpose and for profit, and that's really driven and like how our values and how we make decisions. And I just haven't seen anyone in this space that operate that way.
Yeah, interesting. And I guess, yeah, this podcast is all about finding the balance between, I guess, commercial success and being purpose driven, and having that sort of ensuring that you have that social license. Have there been any kind of tricky decisions that you've had? It sounds like it was kind of baked in from the very beginning, but I'm sure there were some challenges on the way.
Always, yeah, there's always interesting challenges to face. Some of them are like, there's quite easy, just clear cut decisions, but often we're working in the gray too, where there's incomplete information. There's some steps forward you can take while also driving some other change. So an example of that is even when we were starting Sharesies. So when we were doing that research, we were also looking at what people thought about responsible investing and ethical investing and what that meant to them. And through that, we learned actually there's a massive continuum here of what people think is ethical or not. And it was very different. And so what's our role in that? And we looked at the broader societal kind of opportunities, or what we needed to, going back to those 3 problems that we found. And that kind of priced out and jargoned out was a key one. And it's like, our key goal is we need to provide access to people. So we provide access to all the investment options, and then it's our job to make sure they're understanding the risks that they're taking. And then what we believe we'll see more and more of is shareholder activism too. So as companies start to care more about retail investors and they start to take up a bigger percentage of their companies and their staff are as shareholders, then you've got more stakeholders feeding into the decisions those companies are making. And then that helps enable those companies to change. So we ultimately decided to take that stance, which I still believe is definitely the right stance. I would love more ESG data in Sharesies. We just haven't found the data source that we think is accurate enough yet to make sure that we can kind of pin that in there, but we will do that at some point. So that's one. Others are, there are decisions where you have to look at the broader impact you have over the minute at moments too. And we've got large companies that want to work with us that are on a sustainability journey, and then it's our choice. I go and get support from friends who head sustainability in other companies, or talk with B Lab to go, hey, what do you think about this? What should I be thinking through when making these decisions? And kind of get that support to help me make the right decision for Sharesies in that moment that takes into account broader views.
Yeah, I found B Labs to be really helpful in that way. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, so helpful. It's really great.
Because there's been a few companies that have come to us and I'm like, oh, that's kind of, it's in the gray of, it's not on we will not work with you kind of policy in our charter, but it is in kind of the mucky middle. So we sort of, you got to pull on all of your, I guess, your community to try and figure out. And we talk about it with our staff as well, as because I think also ethics are quite personal in some ways as well. So often driven by the leadership team.
Yeah. And I think personally, if I look at my history too, like I'm probably more of a call in rather than call out type of person. So if I notice something, I'll go and direct and have that conversation and see what I could do to support the change needed. That's just like naturally where I gravitate to. And so I think that's kind of interesting too when looking at these decisions.
And, becoming a leader of a fairly significant business, there's no real schools for that either. Like, how did you kind of learn your craft in terms of leadership and becoming a CEO or co-CEO?
Oh, I look back and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm a real big tryhard, I guess. But I've always fascinated by leadership. I remember in my first jobs, like I would just watch the leaders and figure out what I liked and didn't like and how they communicated and why they did certain things. And I'd be perplexed sometimes. And then like later on, I'm like, especially now I've got this role, I'm just like, oh, now I see why they were doing that. So I was always a bit of an observer. And then I deeply cared about learning more about leadership, and I would put my hand up for any leadership course or opportunities that were going, or try and get mentors where I could, because I don't come from a family of like heaps of business connections or anything, and I knew that I needed to learn a lot in that space. And that has been so helpful, that now that I've built this awesome support network too, that's helped me navigate this journey. And I just think being quite deliberate about learning about how to support others to bring out the best in them, to bring out the best in you, to deliver results too, and to ultimately have fun while doing it, I think is quite important.
It's too stressful otherwise.
Yeah, I remember one of my first leadership courses, one of the most impactful I think I did too, when I was in banking. They, at the end of it, you had to summarize your leadership sentence, and I said, having fun delivering like purposeful results or something. And I think it's quite funny to reflect on that sometimes and be like, fun is important. I mean, or the joy in it and enjoying who you're working with, and I think and really ultimately caring about why you do what you do. It just makes it so much easier to get up and make it happen.
So tell me a little bit about the 3-year. I've heard of co-CEOs. I've never heard of a 3-year. Like, how does that work?
There's 6 of us that founded Sharesies, and 3 of us went full-time at the same time, Layden, Sonia and I. So we were all just mucking in, doing what we needed, dividing and conquering the work that we could to bring Sharesies to life and get it to our next milestone and all that sort of jazz. And so that's naturally how we worked. And then we're kind of put into a bit of a framework, like you got to pick a CEO. And so because I was doing a bit more of the shareholder side of things, it just, we decided, cool, Brooke, you do it. So I was the CEO for a couple of years. Then I went out for maternity leave, and Layden and Sonia would co-CEO, and then I'd come back, and then we went for maternity leave, and they co-CEO'd. And when I was coming back, I was like, it always felt a bit weird that there had to be this kind of structure when, like, why? And I really tried to look at different shared leadership and when we started, and tried to figure out how to make that work. So we put to the board a trial, like what if we trialed being a 3EO? So we trialed it for 6 months. Got the whole team involved. They could give feedback, and afterwards it just came out like, actually, I think it's going to enable us to even move faster. There's a shared consciousness. Yeah, it's been going like that for 3 or so years now, and I love it. It's great.
It's amazing. And how do you ensure that you're all on the same, singing from the same song sheet?
Well, the cool thing about Layden and Sonia is kind of like our history. Like, we are so aligned on why we're here. We're here to create financial empowerment for everyone. And we know we want to do that by giving someone with $5 and $5 million the same, money opportunities. We're so aligned on that. No questions asked. We're aligned on our values. We set our values in the first few weeks of Sharesies, where we all founders got together and we talked about the type of company we're creating and what we didn't want to see. And we bullet pointed that down, and then our values themed out of that. And so that's really aligned. So when you've got that aligned, it's all about, the sequencing really of things in some ways. And we all definitely have different opinions. We debate all the time, but what we know intuitively now is when I know when I can be like, yep, cool, I can make that call. Or I can be like, oh, actually, I know, Sonia will really care about this, so let's loop her in. Or go, actually, this is quite a big decision. I'm going to bring them all in, and we'll, I think we're very instinctual now about, there's not real some sort of formula we've written down. It's kind of a lot of instinct in how we operate, and we just communicate really clearly to each other. So it works really well for us, and I really do think it enables us to kind of move at speed and be across things and provide our insights too in a way more scalable way.
I love it. Yeah, must also require absolutely like no egos and total trust of each other as well.
Yeah, and one of our values is like in it together, which is about, it's not me talking to you today, is not about me at all. Like, it's about the team that and everyone else that has created Sharesies, and I'm here to come, share a little bit about that. That's really important to us, that we are one team, and kind of dropping that ego, and the best idea, the best, way of thinking wins at the end of the day, no matter who it's from.
Yeah, awesome. And had you guys worked together prior, like, or like how did you find the 6 founders?
Yeah, so Sonia and I both worked at the same places, but at different times.
Hmm.
So we literally were like ships in the night. Never actually worked together, but had heard a bunch about each other, which is quite funny. And then Leighton was working with Sonia, and he's also my husband, and so they got chatting about, an idea in this space. And then Leighton and I were looking at starting a company together with Martin and Richard, who are the two co-founders that are developers. And then Ben is Sonia's partner, who is our chief designer. And so I know it sounds like, but randomly we all came together and it's like, click. And
That's
it's
amazing.
just
And you have family in the mix as well.
family in the mix. Yep. All of
Wow.
it.
Look, I mean, I started a business with one of my best high school friends. You always say never mix business with friendship or family, but I don't find that those rules necessarily actually have to exist.
No, I think completely. They missed that one.
Yeah, I mean, you're looking for great partnerships, and what better partnership is a life partner.
Yeah, I mean, you're having that anyway in a business.
Yeah. That they'll get pulled into it anyway. I guess. Tell me a little bit about the family side and juggling that. I have kids as well, and I know how difficult it is to sort of split yourself. And how do you find that kind of work-life balance?
Yeah, it's interesting that the term work-life balance, because for me, like it feels so integrated in like in a delightful way now, I'd say. Um, I think when my children were younger, like literally last year, probably even, it felt like, yeah, I just always had this perpetual like to-do list in my head, or like the operations of home, or like how to support them, or what, the random variables they are sometimes. Like, and then also trying to, yeah, like make sure I was onto it, not getting enough sleep, all that kind of stuff, all kind of, a lot of parents go through it. It's like but yeah, now that they're a bit older, 5 and 3, I'm finding it's a lot more fun. I'm not worried that, one's going to get injured all the time as much as they used to be. Like there's just a little bit more rowing in the same direction, but more often, not all the time, but it feels a little bit less like,
less chaotic, less mental load.
yeah, exactly, which is cool. So really enjoying that. Yeah, I definitely integrate things. So, we'll take a couple of hours to hang out with my son, or go support them some way, or, we just kind of balance it in a way that works well for us. And I'm not saying, I used to judge it, I think, when I first became a parent, on every day, like every day did I do this and this and this and this and have time for me and my friends, blah, 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 and I was like, actually, I'm going to lower my expectations on a few things. Like I used to, get all my emails down, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, you know what? I don't have to do that straight away. Like there's a few things I lowered my personal expectations on, which has really not impacted my quality of work at all, but also improved my quality of life, I think. And then also just extending that timeline. Like, did I get some time this week or month even to have some times with friends and things? One thing I've actually found being really helpful for me as a parent in the last year is focusing a bit more on that time to go and do exercise or running or something. Just that is quite important for me to manage my energy, but also to get that headspace. So I have learned that's a little hack that's been working quite well for me.
That's it. I guess you have to figure out what are the ingredients that you need to live a whole life, but it might not be your traditional work-life balance being a founder.
Yeah. How do you do it?
Well, I used to be this. So yeah, I'm currently renovating. I always ride back and to and from work on my bike, and that was kind of like my disconnect from work, even though you never really disconnected. But that beat, I think, really helped me just kind of separate things and work through anything that was still running through my mind, having nothing to do except for thinking about riding down that street and getting home or getting to work. I find that sort of meditative type of physical action quite helpful. Yeah, exercise is very helpful, and being easy on not too hard on myself.
That's great. When you're when you're about to enter the door, the 20 steps before as you're walking into your home, think about, how do I want to show up here? Like, how am I going to show up here? And if you still feel like you can't be embraced with all that energy just yet, like being really clear with your partner, like, hey, I just need 5 minutes or something, or go to the bathroom, whatever it is, so that you can get into that, like, I'm here, I'm present, my phone's away, like, and I thought sometimes think about that sometimes when you feel, but
I think that clear communication between partners is really important, because sometimes I will find myself, my partner Denny, she'll say, Nick, you've gone into a moose hole, at the dinner table or something like that, and I have to sorry, I'm working through this particular thing, and we talk about it, and then obviously, she's amazing, so she often helps me work through certain things as well. So I think sharing a lot of that stuff is also super important.
Yeah. Or then there's the stories go on in other people's minds, and it's like, no, I'm just still thinking.
Yeah, I'm still thinking about it. Sorry, I can't.
Yeah.
What do you think the thing is that people underestimate when starting a business?
I think something people underuse or underutilize actually is their network, or even, should I say, not even if you know them, not even a network, like just cold reaching out to people. I did not realize, because I've always been a bit weird like that, where I would just shameless opportunist in some ways, be like, oh, I'll try that. And the amount of people who had time for us when we were just starting out, never knew us. Sharesies meant nothing. It didn't mean anything to them. They were just meeting with some potential people who may or may not start a company, but the amount of people that gave us time, I was so surprised at. I reflected, I'm like, man, it felt really hard. Like, it felt like everything we're doing for the first time ever. Like, even from co-founder agreements to what kind of technology to use to test a product, all this kind of stuff. Like, we're all trying to figure it out. There was no playbook that was really simple and easy to follow. And that's kind of because all businesses are unique. But I think even just reaching out to people is such a great way to learn and develop and get the expertise you need. So if you're stuck on a question, like trying to solve it yourself, maybe you could just be like, who's ever solved this? Who solved this the best in the world? Let's reach out to them and see what happens.
Yeah. What's the worst that can happen?
Yeah, the worst thing that can happen is you get ignored and you're like, okay, cool. Like, no, it's going to feel, back. But then also, I think, looking back, the support we've got and the new people we've made in our network just from being a bit naive and bolshy like that, I guess, has been kind of helpful.
Yeah.
I feel like that's underutilized.
Yeah, I think naivety is definitely a strength
Bravery.
in the early days, and bravery. Yeah, those two combinations are a necessary thing. In otherwise, you just will never make the jump. I guess it sounds like you were always playing with business ideas, and your trajectory seems to be. It feels like you were always an entrepreneur, but was there a bit of a moment of, is this a risk? Should I make the jump? What was that decision like?
The decision became really easy after all of those conversations we had, where, I held that we held that in our heads and in our heart, like in those conversations was like, it really felt like the risk of not doing it felt greater than doing it, where it's like, you can't sit with all that knowledge and that insight and not do something on it, so that probably was the point where it felt like actually the risk of not doing this felt greater than doing it.
And I guess tell me a little bit about the brand side of it, because you did marketing and
finance, international business and marketing.
I guess tell me about the marketing side of it and building the brand of Sharesies. It's got a really distinct brand. How important was that in the early days, and how has that sort of changed up to now?
When I talked about those kind of 3 problems early on that we needed to solve, that left out, branded out was a really important one, as much as the other 2. And so we knew that it needed to feel quite different. It needed to, we needed to toggle friendly and approachable and fun with credible, because we're dealing with people's money too, and safety and trust. And so it's a really interesting kind of balance to make sure that we, got right. Thankfully, we had Ben and Sonia too, and Layden, who put a lot too into the branding and the ethos. And a lot of it is quite interesting. When we first set up our website, where we would take, people could register their interests, essentially, we would get, would have these conversations with people, and from that we'd learn more about the language people used, and then you could communicate back to them in a way that resonates more and more. And we learned a lot in terms of that, in terms of what enables people to connect with wanting to learn about investing or take the leap into investing when they never have before, or if they have before, what makes them want to choose us. And it's a real mix of the product, but also that marketing and brand fit too. And so we were constantly testing that product market fit until we felt like we got something quite scalable. We didn't put any money behind Sharesies in the early days either. We wanted to see if it could generate the interest itself, and that we weren't kind of fudging the product market fit really. And so that worked out quite well for us. And then once we started to get there, then we could start to go, okay, I think we've built something where people are using it in a way that we're expecting. And it seems to be resonating because we're getting, signups, social signups, and word of mouth's good and blah. And so we're able to take off and start to grow it more.
And has there been any changes in your customer base, or anything that kind of unexpected that you didn't necessarily think might happen?
Yeah, we wanted to, at the start, we wanted everyone to, we've always cared about everyone having access to investing. We wanted people that are never invested before to people who have been investing for a long time. And we want them all to use Sharesies or be on Sharesies, because we don't want to create another class of investor. We wanted more conversations around money and investing. And it's great when people don't have to talk about amounts, but they're like, oh yeah, I'm an investor too. And I'm investing in this, and these people, I'm investing in that. And it doesn't matter how much they've got, you can still share this knowledge. And that was really important to us. And when we started to get really pigeonholed, I'd say, into beginning only. And it's like, but we actually had quite a few customers who had, multi-millions or just been investing for a long time. And they were using us because they could see the benefits. So we needed to articulate that a bit more. And so now, we've got people from 0 to 97 years old on our platform, and they've got, a few cents in their portfolio to hundreds of millions, like multi-millions, should I say. And I think it's really interesting to see just how that we're starting to get that breadth too, which is important, because we really want to make sure that we are, creating financial empowerment for everyone and not kind of a separate type of thing.
Are there different patterns of usage between the different, or are you saying like the power investors invest just as well as everyday you and me? Like, is there interesting data that's coming out of it?
One thing we had to debunk all the time when we started was that knowledge and money are equal. So the more money you have, obviously, the more knowledge you have. Is like totally not true. They are like totally different paradigms. Doesn't matter how much money, people can be investing for ages and not have much. People can be investing for ages and have quite a lot of, money. And people could have heaps of knowledge and not even be investing yet. There's it just doesn't work like that. And so that's something that we kept trying to debunk. It's not about amounts in that regard. But what we do notice different behaviors, like in terms of way people invest. A lot do habitual investing. So they're investing with amounts they can afford, putting money away every payday. But then we have people that obviously do lump sums. We have people that like to trade. There's a whole kind of array of behaviors, and it's not always aligned to how much or anything like that, or how much they know even. Yeah.
And have you noticed any differences between the Australian market and New Zealand? And you've also started up in the US as well. Is that
we're in Australia and New Zealand, but we provide access to the US exchanges. The difference is, which I remember studying in finance as a kind of phenomenon, is home buyers. So New Zealanders are more likely to invest in New Zealand. Australians are more likely to invest in the Australian stock exchange. The only counterpoint to that is the US. Both are inclined to invest in some of the companies that are listed there, or funds that are listed there.
Interesting. And you talked a lot about the original insights that came from kind of building the core brand and business and what you're about. Do you sort of do little dips, and how do you kind of maintain relevant to your customer?
In terms of what, sorry?
I guess in terms of the product, and are you sort of going back and sort of doing similar studies just to make sure that you're still on track and that kind of thing? Or are you sort of seeing it through the product use itself?
Yeah, we're constantly interviewing, like constantly talking to people. If anyone wants to talk to us, we're up for it. Like we love hearing people's perceptions, or where they think what they would like to have access to, or what they'd like to change. We have feedback loops within the product, which people can share their feature requests I'd like. And so definitely keeping that tight feedback is really important. It's also why I kind of like to get out to do events or conferences and things like that too, because I often get to talk to people who are there, who are using Sharesies, and they've got their thoughts, or if they're not, what they're probably about to, which is quite cool. So definitely high engagement in that regard. And then also we've got our vision too, that's above not above, but like potentially outside of some of those things that come back too. And we've still got that kind of founder vision we want to keep bringing to life, which is quite fun.
Yeah, interesting. Because I guess that founder vision could see you, developing all sorts of new products into the future. Is there anything on kind of the horizon that you can kind of let us in on, or?
I mean, one thing I'm super keen, and we're super keen to get launched in Australia and planning on it this year, is kids accounts. So in New Zealand, we've been able to offer that, and we just can't wait to be able to offer that in Australia. And we've also got KiwiSaver in New Zealand. So we'd be, looking into super at some point. But yeah, keen to hear any feedback of what people would like to have access to and would like to learn more about.
Awesome. And I guess finally, looking back, if you could tell your 20-year-old self, one thing, well, what would it be?
I think I'd say time is the most valuable asset, thinking about where I put that and how I make the most of time.
Awesome. Well, I very much appreciate you taking the time with me, Brooke, and having a chat.
Thanks so much, Nick. Appreciate it.
Thank you everyone for listening to The Mucky Metal. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed having the conversation. And if you did, then drop us a review on iTunes or wherever you happen to be listening. We'll see you next month for another episode, but in the meantime, we hope you'll keep walking that fine line between profit and our planet.
The Mucky Metal is a Paper Moose production. Music by Caleb Jacobs.